Yeah. I'd like to call the Monday, February 19th school board meeting to order. This is the time and the place for that meeting to take place. Welcome to all of you who are with us. I bet you're here for part of the presentations. So we're looking forward to them as well as you. Allow me to introduce the board members at the table with me. From my right, we have Sean Heitman and Karina Hernandez. From my left, we have Mike Miller and Ben Fletcher. At the center table with me to my right is Brian Bartz, the board secretary. To my left is Dr. Theron Schutte, the superintendent of schools, and I'm B. Niblock. There is a sheet of paper on the speakers table for any of you who would like to address the board, either during the public comment section or during a board item. So please sign up on that sheet of paper if that's something that you're here to do. You'll be given 5 minutes to speak during public comments. According to board policy, the board is not able to respond to your comments, but we thank you for them anyway. Please read with me the mission statement for the Marshalltown Community School District. We develop learners who have the knowledge, skills, and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences.
You can get it most times.
One more? No. And stand as you're able and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, recognition 1.03, we need to defer to the next meeting. The presentation check is out of time.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher Heitman, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 5-0. Moving on to the consent agenda. Looking at the minutes for the regular meeting on the 5th and special meetings on the 8th and the 12th. Are there any additions or corrections?
There are none.
Any items of note in personnel, Mr. Spaghettis? Looking at the interagency agreements and contracts, we have an agreement with Upper Iowa for student teaching. We have a summer learning contract with Micah. We have an agreement for the dispensing of smoothies at the high school. Sorry, not the elementaries yet. We have contracts for special education students out of the district. And Karina, you'll need to not vote on this when we do.
Yes.
Open enrollments, we have 1 in and 8 out. We still don't have the check, so I guess we're not going to approve that. Looking at the bills, are there any items of note?
No.
The financial report, any questions for Mr. Bartz? May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Miller Fletcher, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. 1 abstention. And would you please mark that that was Karina? The motion carries 4-0, or 4-0-1. Sorry. Anybody on the sheet?
No.
And we're moving right on into Anson already. Mr. Manus, would you bring your crowd forward?
Don't get your attention.
Okay. Do you need for us to go on to another item on the agenda?
Oh, no, they're all here.
Oh, okay.
Ish. There's some fourth graders. I don't know. Okay.
Good evening.
So, I'm not going to talk long because we've heard me talk. I get long-winded and I talk too fast if I start moving, so I'm not going to talk a lot. We've kind of got a bit of a varied showcase tonight of our kids and some things that they're doing, and I'll kind of give a little brief introduction to some of them, and I'll let the teachers do some more. But we started with our theme for this year. Oh, I'm sorry, I pointed to if you go back one. All In for All Kids was our theme for this year. We had a pretty good discussion about what it takes to meet the needs of all of our kids, and not just academically, but talking about the whole child, meeting their needs with the arts and with technology, etc. And we're going to try to showcase some of that today, but you'll see that every member of our staff signed this. This hangs in our front hallway, and we don't plan on taking it down because this is truly what we feel, that we're all in for all kids. Okay. So, first up for us is our fourth grade. We've really tackled writing this year for our staff. We haven't really tackled writing workshop as a whole, but this year, kindergarten through fourth, we have. And our fourth graders have really been enjoying it. They've been implementing elements of technology into it. And if she can find some that weren't scared off by the potential of ice, she's going to bring some up here to talk to you about. Come on up.
So I'm Miss Weisner, and
Can we use the mic, sorry, so that the TV can pick us up too? No, sorry, can you grab the microphone out of the, thanks.
yep. Is it on? There we go. I'm Andrea Queisner. I am a fourth grade teacher at Anson, along with Sarah Lauer. We have been focusing for writing on the Lucy Calkins curriculum. It focuses on developing strong writing habits and reinforcing the importance of the writing process through teacher modeling, anchor charts, and authentic partner discussions. So far, the fourth graders have written narrative pieces, and right now they just finished a nonfiction research piece. To write this nonfiction research piece, the students focused on the who, the what, and the why of their famous person. Based on Lucy Calkins recommendations, to guide the students, the teachers focused on modeling Martin Luther King Jr. The fourth grade students each researched Rosa Parks while writing their nonfiction pieces. Go ahead and give them there. Okay. Yep, go ahead. Two of our fourth graders have a couple of examples of their writing pieces if you guys would like to take a look at them. They have prepared a Kahoot on some of the information that they have learned about Rosa Parks. So I hope that everyone will participate with us. Minor technical difficulties. Is this one? Okay.
Your name, minor technical difficulties. You get up and go.
You heard technical.
Okay. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
He needs the
Come on,
microphone.
Mike.
Okay.
And you can use the other one at the table.
Here you go. Tell me you are.
Hi, my name is Ruben.
There you go. Yep.
There you go.
Hi, my name is Ruben. Hi, my name is John Carlo.
So Popping up on the screen, can you guys hear me? Is that on?
It'll come out if you want.
Okay. Popping up on the screen is a Kahoot, so if you have an electronic device, we'd really appreciate it if you participated along with us. The fourth graders have worked very hard on this. So if you would like to go to kahoot.it and put in the code 7604579. As I tell my fourth graders, have appropriate names. Okay, so since we're missing one, you guys are just gonna go back and forth, okay? Okay.
I don't want to give any tea.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, boys, you ready? Good? Okay. Okay. Okay, go again.
How old was Rosa when she got arrested? 42, 50, 46, 41.
Oh, I can't have access this time, okay. No. Mhm. Okay. No. Whew.
And the correct answer was 42.
Okay. Ready?
When did Rosa die?
Go ahead, keep going.
July 24th, 1955, May 16th, 2005, October 21st, 2005, August 2, 2004.
The music really makes this game. You have no music.
Wish I was that fast.
And the correct answer was October 24th, 2005.
Okay, let's keep going. Okay. Ooh, got some close scores. Okay.
Why did Rosa refuse to give up her seat? She thought it was fair. She thought it was unfair. She was eating. She was sleeping.
Whew.
And the correct answer was she thought it was unfair.
Okay.
What was Rosa's mom's job? No job, businesswoman, seamstress, teacher.
Our microphone turned off.
And the correct answer was teacher.
Okay. Okay.
How did Rosa die? Cancer, old age, infection, assassination. And the correct answer was old age.
Okay.
When was Rosa Parks born? March 14, March 4, 1913, January 5th, 1913, February 4th, 1913, February 5th, 1913. Rosa get arrested? 1947, 1955, 1913, 1950. And the correct answer was 1955. Where was Rosa sitting on the bus? The black section, the white section, the neutral section. The correct answer is the neutral section.
Good job.
Why was Rosa arrested? She did not give up her seat. She stole from the store. She fought a police officer. She told people to stop riding the bus. And the correct answer is she did not want to give up her seat. Why was there a boycott? Rosa got arrested. Black people were not being treated fairly. White people were not being treated fairly. And the correct answer is black people were not being treated fairly. Why did Rosa want to end
Sorry?
segregation?
Smoke me, but you get paper.
Rosa wanted to be president. She wanted to work. She wanted to go to school. There were unfair laws. And the correct answer is there were unfair laws.
Go ahead and thank them, guys. They talk really loud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Oh, who's Miss L?
Who was EF?
I was monitoring to make sure that it didn't go too fast, so.
Thank you.
Now that you've worked your brain, we want you to be able to relax. You can go ahead and move this. Our preschool recently started, had the opportunity to take part in a nationwide study that focuses on integrating yoga into the classroom. And it's basically for self-regulation and behavior. Ms. Quinzine, as well as Mr. Black in PE and Ms. Olson in our level 2 classroom, we're all trained in the basics of implementing yoga poses and breathing techniques. And they're based on the methods that the research team created about 2 years ago in early 2016. Early results of their pilot group, which they started a couple years ago, are pretty promising. They show an overall about 80% decrease in undesired behaviors during the school day. So we're going to have some of our preschool students come over and teach you some of what they've learned and what they love to do every day. I did bring some extra mats if anyone wants to come down here and stretch with preschool. Dr. Judy, anybody? Anthony? Nothing? No yoga? All right, okay. All right, you guys, come on out.
Long man ahead of me.
We're going to stay right in front of you. That's okay.
Yeah, they didn't leave enough room.
So this is something we kind of started, as you said, in January. This morning class actually really enjoys it as well as my afternoon, and I have seen a total decrease in some behaviors that are unwanted. as my 4 little helpers will demonstrate, these are some of our favorite moves that we actually picked this morning. So these are ones they practiced almost every day. All right, I'm actually gonna come sneak around you if that's okay, because then they can see the cards. All right, my friends, you ready? Show me the butterfly. Show me the butterfly.
Are you sure you don't want to get up there?
It's super easy. Are you ready for your next word? Show me the dog. Good. Hey, show me your snake. Good. Show me your surf. Show me how to surf. Switch it. Good job. Last one. Show me your tree. Show me your tree. Make your branches. Make your branches. Oh, good job, friends. Do we have any other ones we want to show? No? Okay. That's just something we kind of do before circle time. Good job, my friends. Hold on. They can show you. Go on. Go that way.
Cool yoga mats.
Those are cool yoga mats.
You were right.
Next night, it was actually in the presentation, just a little blurb at the beginning. We're going to show some stuff that our XLP kids have been doing. You can think coding and electric guitars. So I kind of put it up to them September or so. It was after we did coding night at Miller. And we had some stuff, and I said, I want to see an electric guitar. And Ms. Holman took me seriously. Students did not take me seriously. They didn't think I meant it, but they followed through and they've done pretty well with it. We did have a trio, but we're now going to have a rock soloist tonight with Ms. Holman. So if you guys want to come up and explain what you're doing here and how you did it, go for it.
All right. My target XLP group at Hanson has been working, as he said, to build their own electric
Microphone,
guitar.
please.
The other one's wireless. You wanna-
Is the other one wireless? Let's go with that one then. All right, I'm just back up here. So, how do I turn it on? Hello? Minor technical difficulties, please.
Can you get Josh's seat a little closer?
Thank you very much. All right, I'm more of the roadie here tonight, but my XLP group, as I said, it was a trio, and now we're down to one. You know, it's that time of year for illnesses, I'm afraid. But they have been working really hard on creating and coding their own guitar. So as you can see from my rock star here, they used a Little Bits coding kit and created the circuit base here. And then they played around with different inputs and outputs, as well as learning what those things were. We originally started with buttons and switches and things like that, and they played around with different components to find which would give them the most authentic rock and roll feel. And we finished up, and this is their guitar. Want to tell them about how it works?
You just hit this little button and you move the dimmer switch, and this just shows you what it is playing.
So once they built this, the kids had to then go in, and the LED matrix here was completely blank, and they had to go in and customize each image for each note, get it to code together, and get it to all coordinate together. I'll show you just really quick. This is the screen showing the coding that they put together, so it's kind of elaborate. But they worked really hard to get this all together and to get it to work, and then we went through a debugging process as well, because sometimes things don't always work the way we intend. And so this is what they put together, and they did a great job.
Nice. Thank you.
So a couple of things as our last little piece gets ready. Just a couple of things that we've continued to expand this year with our community outreach. We started the box gardens 5 years ago, and we started with 1, and we built up, and this year we're going to have 5, so we're going to have 5 box gardens. A couple of my 3rd grade teachers actually head this up, and we work with the Extension Office at Iowa State. What we do is we pick a theme. One year we did a salsa garden. This year we're just going to do fresh vegetables, but our kids work on it at the end of school. They plant everything. We grow it from seed. We don't buy any of the plants. Everything we get is grown from seed that we grow at school. And then they plant it all. We have different kids that will come out every week and they'll work with the garden. And then as the year goes, those kids can take part in the garden. We also use this as part of our pantry that we have in school. So any fresh vegetables we have that aren't taken by kids, we generally, with 5 box gardens, we'll have quite a bit this year. We use in our community pantry so that anyone in the community can use that one. And our pantry is on the next slide. We started this last year. We actually have pantries at Anson. You have one at Franklin. You have one at Hoagland. You have one at Miller. And these are not just for our school. These are community pantries. So we, right now, we're pretty low. Actually, we had to turn a couple of people away because it's been used so much in the past couple of months. Unfortunately, it's a very heavy need in our community. We serve 25 to 30 households a month, and probably 70 to 80 individuals. Plus, we can also send food home with kids. So that's just a picture of what our pantry generally looks like. It's not anywhere near that full right now, but we coordinated and we partnership with the Food Bank of Iowa out of Des Moines. It doesn't cost us anything. Lynn Large also has been a fantastic help to us with the food pantry. Up until this year, they used to go and get the food and bring it to us. Now we have the luxury of the food pantry delivering to us now. The Food Bank of Iowa delivers to us. So all the schools coordinate our orders. They bring them all to us at once. So it saves us the trouble of having to get down to Des Moines, especially in the winter months, and it just provides a great service to our families as well as others.
Nice.
How often do they come?
About every 6 to 9 weeks we can order, and we place an order. There's sometimes we haven't needed it during the summer months. It doesn't get used as much, but and it's just like the Food Bank of Iowa is dependent upon Hy-Vee, Fairway, etc., other places donating to them. So 1 month we may be able to get frozen food, we may be able to get meat, we may not be able to get any. So it's just kind of the will of the donators of what we get. Okay. Collaboration means to work jointly with others in a unique endeavor. So at Anson, we've taken it upon ourselves this year. It's actually our 2nd year to do a self-study of collaboration and co-teaching. We focus our efforts on the co-teaching aspect between our ELL and classroom teachers. Generally, when you see a co-teaching model, it's usually special education in the classroom. We have a bigger need with our ELL population, so we have teamed our ELL teachers and our classroom teachers together on every level, kindergarten through 4th, focusing on literacy right now. Early returns look very promising as we continue to gain confidence and also trust in each other. It's very, it's a process to actually be able to learn to work together side by side as a true partnership when you're not used to doing it. They're doing a fantastic job with it. That collaborative spirit has kind of spilt over into other areas, specifically in some of our specialist classes. Miss Dean and Mr. Black, who are our music and physical education teachers, have been combining their talents to work with kids in a very unique way. So what they've been doing during school and during recess times, etc., is working with kids and combining and looking at exercise, rhythm, movement, music, and roll it into one great big ball of excitement. It's not the first time that they've gotten together and done this, but you're tired of hearing me talk, so I thought you'd just get a little taste of what they do. You guys ready? Yeah. All right, come on up.
It's Murphy's Law right now. Okay, just go ahead.
Are there any questions? They're gonna talk now. They've been on the hallway for 30 minutes flying. We're done now. That was pretty good.
I was a little disappointed you didn't invite me to participate in that activity.
Or you didn't join, Ronnie.
Back.
You could have joined too.
Does anybody have any questions? I do appreciate you letting us come and showcase some of the other things the kids do. You know, we look at our academics all the time, we look at our demographics, we look at everything else. So it's kind of fun to showcase some of the things the kids do in school, and they have fun. You know, we always talk about, but I think it's important that we show that we're teaching the whole child. We got to get them moving, and maybe we should have done yoga last, but we use these mats as resting things. But I do appreciate it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Stevenson?
You don't go ahead. Okay, hi. Do I sit, stand?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry, I'm new to this.
Use the microphone.
My name is Joan Verjanik. Is that on? Yeah. I am a 5th and 6th grade ELL teacher at Buckingham, and I am getting my Master's of Education, and for my thesis, I am hoping to collect data on the effectiveness of Lexia Reading Core 5 on 5th and 6th grade English language learners. So my abstract and other information is attached, but did you guys have a chance to look at it? Does anyone have any questions on it?
I do. Did you visit with her about a permission slip?
They're not having access to individual student identifiable information.
The parents need to know that if you're using individual scores in your thesis.
No student names.
Correct, I understood that but you're using individual scores, not composite group scores?
I'm compiling the individual scores, and then I'll be looking at the mean scores from the winter and the spring.
You need to have a parent permission to access that data as an individual student. And they need to understand that you're using it.
Even
Even though you're not using their names.
Okay.
So she could create a one-page document.
Quick
share it.
little,
We'll approve it in
Yep.
English and Spanish and send
Yep.
them.
Okay. And then I have to get them signed and returned, or just
Yep.
sent out?
no, they have to be signed and returned.
Okay.
Yep.
For the 37 that are
Yeah,
participating.
those, only those that she's going to be using.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Any other questions?
We'll be excited to see your results.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion to approve the thesis as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is that a Ben? Fletcher, Hernandez, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
No luck. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, this one works?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so tonight I'm here just to share with you, I shared the first quarter goals for the strategic action plan goal areas that pertain particularly to curriculum, instruction, and assessment. So I'm here. We just finished up first semester mid-January, and we're able to compile the results and share with you how we're doing thus far. And this is condensed into a first semester viewpoint. So if you'll go to slide, thank you. Just as a reminder, goal 1 in our plan is looking at student achievement. And in particular, what you'll see in this presentation is the work that we're doing to increase student reading proficiency, which in turn directly affects the other metrics, 1, 2, and 3. And then goal 4 is also in our strategic action plan, looking at learning environments and the conditions of learning that our students are experiencing on a daily basis. And those are the behavior and attendance data slides you'll see tonight. Next slide. And I've tried to take into account some of the suggestions that you made at the last presentation of data, and I did some of them and got even more feedback for third quarter, so it's a work in progress. So you'll see here, there's separate slides on attendance, behavior, and student achievement in reading and math. And our goal, as a reminder, I'll just tell you the goal for each slide so you don't have to flip to the end. Our goal is to have no more than 15% of our students in Marshalltown chronically absent. And so you'll see our chronically absent number of students on the left and then percentage of enrollment because, as was pointed out last time, our buildings do have quite different enrollment numbers when you look at the high school versus a two-section building like Rogers. And that was first semester combined. And then the next slide, do you want me to stop after each goal area or just go through the whole thing?
Why don't you go through it?
Go through it? Okay. And this slide that you'll see here is looking at behavior referrals and bullying and harassment data. And so what you'll see is that we had a total of 930 major behavior referrals in first semester. And then that circle, the pie chart there shows you the distribution of those incidents and where they occurred. And then you also see that information represented in the line graph too. And then last time, we talked about bullying and harassment as a specific behavior referral, which is embedded in those 930. We had 9 incidents of harassment first quarter and then finished out the semester with 17. So that was consistent from first and second quarter. And the next slide is looking at reading achievement. And there's a lot of bars there in front of you. The blue is our percentage of students that are proficient. Red is our students who are not yet proficient. You also see by grade level how our students did in the fall, which they took the test very late this year, later than usual because of some technical difficulties at the state level. And then the winter scores just happened the 3rd and 4th week of January, and then I think some were still doing makeups the beginning of February. So you can see by grade level. And what you see underneath is our default assessment. So at each grade level, students take 2 reading assessments. So for example, I guess districts have a choice. If you want to report to the state A reading as your default, or do you want to report CBMR? And so what you see in front of you is our default, what we have chosen in Marshalltown schools. So at kinder and first grade, we use composite scores that are made up of subtests that the kids take that are those beginning reading skills versus looking at the A reading, which is a multiple choice reading comprehension exam. We feel that's a better predictor of proficiency in K and 1. And then at 2, 3, 4, the students use the A reading, which is that reading comprehension, which is that shift from learning how to read to reading to learn. And then at 5th and 6th grade, we are looking at CBMR, and for people who aren't familiar with what that means, that's your fluency, that's your words per minute. So the kids should be fluently reading and comprehending at that point and building up on their speed as they get into more complex and difficult text. So that's what 5th and 6th grade look at. And I think what's probably as a board member important for you to look at is the information on the left side of the slide shows historically since FAST began in the state of Iowa how Marshalltown has performed on their default assessment. And this is information that is shared with parents and looked at the building level to make instructional decisions. And while it is disappointing that we went down from fall to winter from 52 to 48%, I think it's important to put this historically in perspective because we've made great progress since last year. So if you look at least in my perspective of when I started, where we were at 42% and beginning the differentiated accountability process, to think we're up to 48%, and I predict greater growth towards the spring score too. All the while, our goal is try to get to 60% for this year. That was the major goal that we set as a district last summer.
And is not from fall to winter a moving target as well?
Right, so every, the test gets harder, if that makes sense. The kids have to read more words per minute or get more questions correct in order to make the next benchmark. And I don't drill down into that level of data, but B brings up a good point of our kids are making growth. They're just not growing as fast as the test is asking them to grow. So
The definition for proficiency changes.
the definition changes, correct. And ultimately, we're really worried about the end of the year, so hopefully getting them to where they need to be by the end of the year.
So because they took it later in the fall, did they take it later in the winter too then, or did they take it on track?
Not, it may be varied by like a week. Some schools did the first week of February, last week of January. Some did the third and fourth week of January. But we were kind of under pressure of getting it done in that testing window before Iowa assessments started. It's been a very busy testing season for us the last few weeks. But hopefully that delay of testing won't impact us in the future, next year. And then moving along, and this is just a glimpse at A reading in general for you to look at. But again, that's not our default for our first graders, nor is it for our fifth and sixth. Actually, at the top, that should say sixth, not eighth. Try to see if I made that mistake somewhere else too. Nope, it just says first. It should say sixth grade at the top because you don't see the seventh and eighth scores in that graph. And next slide is our first look at math, and that should also say sixth, not eighth. Sorry about that. But that is our percentage of students that are proficient in math. And this is a new process for us with math. And so as many of you were aware, there were lots of high stakes associated with the reading testing. There was going to be third grade retention based on that reading testing. And so districts 3+ years ago started using fast testing for reading. Well, this system that allows for A reading and that you just saw on the last slide, they also have a very similar screener for math. And we began using that at Lenahan last year and Miller this year, and then are going to use that at K4 too. And I'm excited about that because I think it'll give us some early indicators district-wide about kids that are struggling in math. Because right now, and for many years across the state, all that districts would have is their Iowa assessments, that once-a-year test in math, or like chapter tests from their math curriculum. So this will give us a chance to start to intervene sooner. And to be honest, our math data is not looking that great right now on this slide, and I'm hopeful for improvement and to look at how our K4 kids do when they take this later this spring. And this information you saw, I believe, too, after first quarter. IGDs is the actual literacy test that the preschoolers that were right in front of you a little bit ago get to take 3 times a year. And the slide shows you it also is a composite that's drawn from subtests. So the kids have a picture naming test, a rhyming test, sounds. So like, are they able to discriminate sounds, beginning sounds, or words that start with the same sound? And then I believe the one that says which actually is a test called Which Doesn't Belong, I believe, where they are attempting to work on other pre-literacy skills. So you'll see in there, our goal for these kids too is to continue to grow that percent. As you can see, we ended spring in 32% and 43% for last spring. And I believe our goal for this school year for spring was 50% for IGDs.
You've got the chart there for fall at 17. Is there, do you know what the kind of composite is?
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask me that. Yeah. So the interesting thing too with this is they have not, they took away a system that gives us a composite, so we have to hand calculate the composite for the 200 kids, and so I don't have that with me tonight, but I can check to see how we grew from fall to winter, if you'd like that information.
Yeah, it looks like we're making 15 to 16, 16 to 17, there was progress. I guess it'd be nice to be able to measure it the same way, but
the former
different system.
Yeah, would upload that information for us. But I can get that and share it with you. But our goal, of course, is to have all of our kids have strong progress in spring IGDs in preschool to indicate readiness for kindergarten. Yes, it was 50%. So our goal is to hit 50% by spring. And then the last 2 slides are just kind of those placeholders I had in there the first time around, just to keep in mind what are those goals we're working towards. You know, we're 100+ days into the school year. We're really still focusing on chronically absent students and keeping those percentages low or lower than they've been in the past, not to exceed 15%, keeping our, I noted we have 17 incidents of harassment or bullying behavior, keeping that down to not, no more than 1% of our students being involved in those incidents. And then the same for dropout and graduation rate. You see there are our goals that we're working to for this school year. And then the last slide that you have is also really student achievement in terms of reading and math. Students just finished taking Iowa assessments the weeks are running together. They took it the week of February 5th, and then makeups have been going on in the buildings since then, and we're getting ready to get our labels and get those sent in and scored, and look forward to getting them back and sooner rather than later so we can share how the students did with parents and teachers. Any questions on, sorry, that's your line.
Yeah, so where would you, if you had to summarize these 10 slides on the areas that we think we're doing great in, like what are your hits and what are the misses and what are the opportunities based on your hits and misses?
I would say miss is kind of a strong word. So, I mean, miss would make me think we're not even close to where we need to be, but I think all the buildings are still really deep in trying to figure out the chronic absenteeism and how to address that with our families and with the staff that we have and the systems we have in place. Initial, I think it was the January 31st state reporting in Iowa that I uploaded did not indicate that we were trending in the right direction with chronic absenteeism. That 15% that we had is a courageous goal, but I think that considering that most of the other districts in the state were down in the 8 to 10%, we're just a lot different in that way in terms of attendance, which is, you know, kind of the foundation of all this other work. You can't benefit from the social, emotional, math, and reading that we work on if you're not here. So maybe a miss in that area. A hit, I'm encouraged by our reading scores. I know I would have liked to have seen positive growth from fall to winter, but it's not easy to move a system this big. I think we even talked last summer about, you know, just increasing from 56 to 60% doesn't seem that monumental, but given the mobility of our students and, you know, the amount of teacher turnover and other things that we just as a system have to work through, growth is good, and we're trending. I see us trending in the right direction that way. We have a lot of plates spinning right now to try to address our students' reading and math needs.
I'm very encouraged by what I've seen on these reading charts over the last couple of presentations you had. I mean, the fall to winter wasn't maybe what you wanted, but the fall 17 to the fall 16 was such a big jump and maybe slightly inflated by the delay of the testing. So you're on track for improving greatly year over year.
I didn't give individual building data on that either, because you've asked to see a more global look, I guess, at how our buildings are doing. But interestingly enough, all of the buildings went down fall to winter. So it wasn't anything kind of unique at one site versus another. So that kind of makes us go back to the drawing board as a system and think, well, it's something that all buildings would benefit from, you know, a deeper look at. It's not, it was actually very perplexing to see that happen across the board.
How much was the fall test delayed?
How late was it?
Yeah. Roughly.
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks later.
So they had 3 weeks extra school in the fall before taking that test.
So their scores were maybe just a little inflated over, so that would have explained maybe we would have been flatlined from fall to winter instead of a decrease. I don't know
how much of it, how early, but it seems like it would have an impact.
Well, I think we've talked a little bit about, unfortunately, you know, during the time of our Iowa assessments. It was also in the heart of the flu coming through, so I know
The
our
ice,
buildings are
snow.
still working feverishly to try to get kids made up who missed, upwards of 4 or 5 days due to that, in addition to everything else. So it'll be interesting to see what potential impact that has.
The IGDs I'm not as familiar with, but, I mean, this seems to show me how important preschool is to I mean, if our kids coming into preschool are very few of them ready for kindergarten, and we're leaving, you'd still like to see that number higher, but it's significantly more than are coming into preschool.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know how much of that's just being a year older but it seems significant.
Yeah, it's been interesting just to be able to see with our private partners who take the same assessments that our public school kids do, to see the difference in what a preschooler looks like that we serve in our program compared to some of our private partners from day one. There
Their
is a
fall
gap.
numbers are significantly different.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're not scoring in the 8% range. They just have had a lot more possibly school experiences, which is hard to think about, but even at 3-year-old or, the poverty book has led us to some of those
I
conversations.
was just going to make that statement that when we get into chapter 2 and we're discussing that, you're going to see some of the very things that Jensen talks about in chapter 2 are playing out in the achievement scores that you're seeing here.
Well, was the read by third, one of the meetings like a year ago had a video like on this topic, right? I forget what the name of that was, but it really tied into chapter 2 of the book, was the showing the development lag, health really, more than as much as anything else.
Through NBC maybe?
I vaguely remember that, yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting off topic, but.
So I appreciate being able to share and that you're asking us to see the data, because even if it's hard to look at, sometimes it keeps us moving in the right direction and keeps us focused.
And it reminds us what our focus needs to be.
Yep.
Any other questions for Dr. Stevenson? Next topic, Dr. Stevenson.
I think I have 2 of my TLC staff are here to help with the Lexia presentation also. You brought
Is this the
paper,
one that works?
just in case there's technical difficulties.
Well, I have notes.
Oh.
Okay, so, is this working? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Erica Finders. I am the pre-K through 6 curriculum and professional development leader here, and I'm here to talk to you about Lexia Core 5 and its implementation in our pre-K, possibly, 6 classrooms. So just some basics with Lexia implementation. This is an online program that provides literacy instruction for all students K-6, and we're considering adding preschool this spring. Students are kind of recommended 20 to 80 minutes per week, depending on where their placement test places them when they start the program, and also the pace at which they're moving through the program helps the program determine what their recommended minutes are every week. They access the program with Chromebooks, and most of the time they're doing this during the independent time during Reader's Workshop, when teachers are meeting with small groups and kids are working on computers and reading and doing independent activities. Students move through this at their own pace, and then as students might be struggling in the program, lessons are populated to the teacher dashboard, and then the teacher meets with students one-on-one to address the need that is identified in the program and give them one-on-one lessons related to that skill that they're struggling with. We have had ongoing coaching from our Lexia Implementation Manager, who meets with building principals and instructional coaches. It was monthly last year, and I believe this year it's quarterly. And also she works with Lisa and I as well. And there is an at-home usage option available for students as well, that they can work on it at home when they want to.
And the next couple slides have some data that was pulled for us by our implementation manager. This is the K-4 students, comparing all the students who are working in the program on the left and the students who are meeting their usage goals 50% of the weeks that they're in the program on the right. So you can see that with all the students who have been working in Lexia, we started the year with 33% of them working 2 grade levels or more below. And currently, at this point in the school year, as of January 28th, there were 12% of students working at that level. And when you look at the kids who are consistently meeting their usage on the right-hand side, you can see that that's decreased even more with those students.
What did you say the start was? Was this beginning of the year, or was this last year?
This is the beginning of the year, this start, yep. But this is our second year with the program, but that graph is from the beginning of the year. And these are also from beginning of the year to current, or it was January 28th that this data was pulled. So you can just see that each grade level, you can see the percentage of kids at each grade level who are working at each grade level within the program and how that's shifting over time to more kids working at higher grade levels. And then this data is from Lenahan. It's very similar to the previous slide for K4, showing you all the students who are working in the program, and then the students who are meeting their usage and the movement they've made in the program so far this year. Also to note at Lenahan, I know when I created this slide, 189 students had finished the program completely at Lenahan, and when I looked today, at the end of the school day, there are 201 students at Lenahan who have completely worked their way through. It's a fifth, yep. So it goes through 5th grade skills. And then we have a few observations from teachers. We just collected a couple of those. So just some highlights there are the independently practicing English literacy skills, students seeing success immediately, and a 6th grade teacher noted and has talked to me numerous times that what she really appreciates is that this helps fill in gaps for students, and that several newcomers have moved into her classroom, and even not being able to speak English, they can start working at the preschool level with literacy skills right away. And it's just so exciting for those students to be able to right away have something they can be successful at in the classroom. So she's really appreciated that. And then it also reinforces the concepts that teachers are teaching in the core, like idioms as the example. So that's our K6 update with Lexia Core 5. And then,
hi, I'm Pam Brewer-Michael, and I'm the 712 Curriculum Professional Development Leader. And today was day 1 of Lexia's Power Up at Miller Middle School. So kids were starting through their auto placement test today. This is Lexia's adolescent learning system for 6th graders and above. Although this program will reach down to preschool and kindergarten reading levels for students to meet their needs. It operates from a student perspective somewhat similar to Core 5, except it looks much more middle school, high school appropriate. That was, I think, one of the first things that when teachers had their first look at it at Miller Middle School, they recognized that this looks like an age-appropriate program for our students. I'm very excited because it's going to, we feel, meet the needs of all of our learners at Miller, those that are really just learning to read, and then all of those that are advanced learners who are ready for rigorous content, and so that rigor is in this program. Can we move on? So today was the launch date. Students started their prescriptive testing, and they will be placed into the program based on the results of that particular assessment. There's 3 areas in Power Up. There's word study, There's the grammar, and then there's comprehension, and each student will test into one of 3 zones, either foundational, intermediate, or advanced. And so those combinations allow for 60 different learner profiles compared to the 18 in Core 5. And so we feel like this particular product allows our students a greater personalization within the program. And again, we ask teachers to give us some initial thoughts. And I think the one that really resonated with me was Ann Jackson's comments. Lexia's Power Up advanced students will be reading excerpts from classics like The Diary of Anne Frank, culturally diverse sections like Harlem by Langston Hughes, and pieces with historical significance like Kennedy's Moon speech, and selections tied to modern current events like Malala Yousafzai. Yep, thank you. I even practiced that today. Speech to the United Nations. And Anne really feels that the Power Up is going to reach all of our learners, including Miller's highest achieving students, as well as our students who are really struggling and beginning readers in that building.
Any questions from the board?
No, I'll just say I have a kindergartner, and the thing that I hear the most about at school is what level he is on in Lexia. Dad, I don't even know what the levels are. I'm on this level now. Congratulations, buddy. I don't quite know what that means, but that sounds like a big brag, so way to go.
I think it's intuitively makes them think about gaming systems and things that they enjoy, not school, which is important. And we patiently waited for Power Up to come out because we were aware that 7th and 8th graders weren't going to find it super exciting to do the Lexia Core 5, which was intended, at best to be with 5th or 6th graders. And so to have reading selections that kids will find relevant or hopefully interesting is a huge advantage.
So then will the kids who have completed the 5th grade, like there were several 4th graders it looked like, or even some 3rd graders who were all the way through, will they then move into Power Up? Maybe not the 3rd graders, but.
Yeah, we're looking at that possibility at Lenahan. We're going to start small right now and see how that goes. But yeah, we're looking at that at Lenahan for sure because that's 6th grade.
Right.
Yeah.
I went through the demo program, and just from my perspective, I'm not sure that a 3rd grader is going to appreciate the humor
Right.
they're going to experience in Power Up. It's definitely targeted for a little older age student. And Power Up too has a little bit more gamifications, so you can collect streaks so that if you miss a question, you can turn your streak into Power Up, and it's just, gamey.
Do we know to what extent kids are accessing it off-site?
Because we use Clever to log in, it looks to the program like they're always at school because it's the same login process, so we can't differentiate between those. But we can, I shouldn't say that for sure, we can see what time of day they were on it. So I remember when I was at Lenahan last year, seeing kids just working through the program like crazy and noticing, they were on it at Saturday night at 8 o'clock. And it's like, well, that's what they wanted to be doing, I guess. So we can track it that way.
You might have said this and I missed it, but what is the percentage of students using it to the kind of suggested amount of time? Or?
That was that slide that said the 77%.
Yeah.
I don't know if it had the actual number of kids.
That's an ongoing challenge that we're trying to figure out with only X number of instructional minutes per day. If the prescription is personalized for that student and says they need 80 or whatever it may be, how do we ensure that happens, but also ensure they have all the other things they're supposed to have in their instructional day? So we're still working. But the data is really promising for the kids that do meet their minutes. 77% of the kids group one grade level, it's only half a year. So to think that 80% of them almost were able to achieve a year's growth in half a year is accelerated growth like we don't see in a typical intervention that we do with students in literacy. And so it's kind of, kind of makes you think, well, what would happen if every kid was able to reach their instructional minutes? What kind of percentage? Or maybe we wouldn't even need that dark gray bar of 2 grades below. That would be really encouraging because it's a giant challenge for teachers to try to close a gap of 1 year below in 1 year, in addition to learning everything they're supposed to learn that year.
That is the K-4 data, and in another district as well as this one, we have noted that we have kids coming in at kindergarten 1 to 2 standard deviations below the norm based on poverty and or ELL, and if it's both, it's a double hook. So for them to make up with accelerated growth, they started out, essentially 2 years below performance when they come in the door, so.
Yeah, no, I like seeing, the right side looks better than the left side. I'm curious how many, it says 1,154 students. I guess I could probably do the math, but.
I can get you that, I just didn't, yeah.
I guess just roughly, how many K-4 students do we
We
have?
could get that information, it's just not in here.
The slide before that, there's 1,920 total kindergarten through 4th.
So we're looking at like 60% of students are hitting those targets?
Roughly.
That sounds about right, actually. Yeah.
Our triangle, though, is inverted in almost every grade level when we start placement tests in the fall, where 80% of the kids are not at grade level. So it kind of puts our FAST data in perspective, too, that to get to 48% is pretty great growth when, we're starting, our data is showing our kids are starting the year significantly behind in many cases.
And when, I totally forgot what I was going to say, something that you just reminded me of. Oh, the recommended minutes are more for the kids who are farther behind. So depending on how far behind you start, your target is just that much higher as well to meet your minutes.
And the expectation is to do those minutes in the school day?
Yeah.
The at-home is all optional?
Right.
And this year we built in an MTSS time of 30 to 45 minutes at the elementary grades, but the conflict is that's the time when special ed teachers and ESL teachers and Title I teachers would like to pull their kids for groups because they're not getting pulled out of the classroom, which makes complete sense. But then it also is very hard for these kids then to meet their minutes because they're with a teacher during that time, so.
Presumably there's a bunch of overlap between the 80-minute students and the kids getting pulled out.
Right, and Miller's at a little bit different situation. Students access Power Up during their Triple E time, initially the plan has not been for all of their Triple E minutes, which happens every day. And Triple E is protected for most students. And the few students that don't have a Triple E are those students who have just packed schedules. They're in multiple music classes, and so those students are accessing their minutes because an instructional coach is pulling them oftentimes before school starts. So at Miller, the kids who aren't meeting their minutes are those kids who are just crammed schedules during the day. So because Triple E is protected, there aren't students who are pulled out, except the students who don't have Triple E because they have too many classes in their schedule.
Does this get shared with the parents? Like their data or their level or growth?
I believe at K4 or K6, that's shared with them, the level that they're at. Yeah, we shared it at Lillian last year, I know that for sure.
And at parent-teacher conferences in the next couple of weeks, we'll be sharing with parents. We'll have Power Up set up in the library at Miller so parents can see. And we haven't yet shared, we're just getting started with that, so.
I know they shared at parent teachers the log-on information for Lexia and STMA, but I'm not sure if they actually got a printout of their child's performance at the time. it's something we could consider if that would be helpful for parents to know.
It'd be nice to, take advantage of conferences also to remind and or encourage parents or make sure that they know, if their kids have access to being able to do Lexia or do ST Math at home. Kind of to Sean's point, he talks about levels, but I don't really know, to give them some guidance as to how they can help support or encourage or kind of sort of know, help with some goal setting maybe and that sort of thing. But that could up the minutes for a bunch of them too. Generally speaking, because of the gamification, a lot of them want to do it. But it would be interesting to see if we can time band it just to see what kind of usage there is afterwards.
Yeah, I can look into whether we can actually pull that. The only way I've seen to do it is to go into each individual kid and look at their timestamps, but there might be a way.
And that might be something our implementation manager
Yeah.
could pull from their side too.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are going to move to the roundhouse conversation now, as long as Kevin is here and needs to hit the road.
That one's not working. The other one is.
It worked for a while.
Work now?
Yep.
Oh, there we go.
We put together an update. I just put a few line items in here of some of the construction that has occurred over the last couple of weeks and some things that are going to be upcoming. And then I put, we've got a couple of other attachments, and I'll explain those as we go along. And Kevin is here to talk through the other ones. The excavation of the basement was completed on the 12th of February. Shortly thereafter, the shoring was done all the way down to the sub-basement. Surveyors were on site on the 15th to lay out placement of the final geo-piers. The interior geo-piers have been completed. Now we're looking at the exterior geo-piers. Beginning this week, Helitech is going to bore the final geo-piers. Young Plumbing was on site on the 15th to repair a storm drain that was damaged during the initial geo-pier installation. The week of the 26th, the weather permitting, Terracon is going to inspect the excavated site of the basement to make recommendations so that we can rock the basement, and then we can begin installation of the footings. Windhold will rock the sub-basement if the conditions are dry and not frozen. We put up some additional safety fencing last Friday because we do have a pretty deep hole, and we have the exterior fencing around the construction site, but we would like to, we just wanted to, for some added security, we put up some more fencing.
So, start seeing concrete toward the end of next week, finally.
Are the piers the same sort of pounded rock piers that we saved a bunch of money on in the bid?
Yeah.
Some of the system is, but closer to the building, they're the helical piers that were in the original design. So it's a hybrid system.
So that was sort of a change from the original bid was, I think, right?
Yeah. So the second time we bid it, the original bid was, we gave them the option of doing all helical or all basically soil improvement, which is the aggregate. But ultimately, the decision was, let's do a hybrid of those so that we aren't doing a lot of pounding close to the roundhouse. So along the line of the building, we kept the helical. So it costs a little bit more money to do that.
What's your sense of?
Would you use your microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry, please. Have this fancy microphone. So what's your sense of the building being finished by December of 2018 and us, kids being able to wrestle and play basketball in there?
The ball team has gone back and developed a critical path schedule that shows that they are able to meet the schedule. So right now, they're telling us that they can meet the schedule.
Which is, I think, November 15th or something.
November the 19th was the last update. Last Thursday was what they said was substantial completion would be November the 19th of this year.
That's good news. Good.
Are we on pace or we have to do some catch up? Are we
We're on
where we
pace.
expected to be? Yep.
We're on pace. They gave us, we did drop back a week because of weather. Our original completion date was the 12th of November. Now it's back to the 19th of November. But in early January, we had some issues with the weather. So for them to be able to core for the geo piers, we had to have some pretty good conditions. And they hit a window where they did the geo piers in a really timely fashion, just in between some of those cold spells.
So we're basically on time. What about dollars?
Those are
The next slide. Go to the.
Well, yeah, you show us in 4-point font.
Okay, this is, will you scroll down? Thank you. I have two slides here. One of them is a proposal request, and the other one is change order and proposal request combination. Down at the bottom of this, I have I put together what is a definition of a proposal request. Proposal requests are what the contractor submits to the team for additional monies that are not on the contract document.
The change order request is what they call that, COR.
Right,
Change order request.
I'm sorry. And then the design team reviews the CORs to see if they're legitimate. If it's legitimate, the design team issues the PR, which is a proposal request for the work. And the contractor can resubmit it if anything changed during that original request when they did the proposal request. The design team reviews the cost and presents the cost to the owner. I am the owner representative, and we take a look at these during the construction meetings, and we have to approve those. This is not something I independently do. This is something that I talked to Dr. Schutte and Brian, and we approve before anything can be billed. We have $100,000 in allowances right now. We started with $100,000. $88,000 were for construction changes. 12,
Contingency.
right, just contingencies.
Contingency allowance, and 12,000 was specifically for the site and a stormwater issue that we knew existed, but we didn't know how to define. So we thought it'll be about 12,000. Let's tell every bidder to put $12,000 in for that, because we can't give enough definition, and when bidders don't have enough definition, they might put in 30,000. So we gave them a number to start with. So that totaled $100,000 in allowances that are in the contract. And right now, the things that are coming up against those allowances mean we don't have any change orders that change the dollar value of the contract. We're working against those.
If you scroll up, Josh, we have some things. We had a positive change for going from solid plenum to duck socks in the gym of $19,000. Exterior site lighting, we had an issue where we couldn't locate it. Bobcat Boulevard to the north, from the center of the roundhouse all the way north. We couldn't locate that lighting where it was fed from, so we cut it. We damaged that. We had two options. One was to repair the existing, the other was to replace with LEDs. We opted to just repair at $6,300. We declined the $15,800 for the LEDs. Then we had another slight reduction. We did add $18,000 for site lights that weren't shown on the plan, $11,000 for access control not shown on the electrical, which was part of that, and then changing the gym floor to all wood, going from partial wood to a urethane backed surface. We decided to just go with all wood for ease of transition and for ease of maintenance. So that was an addition. And then we have some things that we're looking at that have not been.
Yellow,
right.
the ones that are highlighted in yellow have not yet been approved. That number 7 is kind of the allowance for that $12,000. So it's pretty close. They're saying the cost is $12,308.
Cool. And then $1,380 for electrical box, floor boxes. So our total was $20,700. If you go to the next page, Josh, the next attachment. This just puts it all together. And you can see out of the original $88,000, we have $67,000 remaining for contingencies, construction contingencies. And that $12,000 will be even because we did plan for that.
And those 3 that are highlighted, those are all things that, matter of fact, the work has been done. The sewer line is already underground. That work was done last week. It had to be done. It's all about the price, making sure that it's an appropriate price. So once those are added in here, that $67,000 in the bottom will drop down to about $61,000. And as you saw on the very first of these 3 sheets, the first thing we were looking at, there are some other things that are out there. And that's what the allowance is for, is to tackle those things. If we burn through all the allowance, which we very possibly will, then that's when we start talking about actual change orders that would change the cost of the project. So we're not there at this point.
So where is the piers/foundation? You said there was an increase because they didn't. Is that?
That has not been formalized yet. It's not here. We're in the negotiating phase on that.
Estimate?
Well, they have an estimate and we have an estimate, and there's a big difference between those right now. So we'll know better in a week.
But that work has been done, hasn't it?
Not all, but most, yes. But there's conversations about, well, did we get a credit for the work that wasn't done? Things like that need to be discussed. We're just at the very, very beginning of that conversation. So that's kind of the financial status.
When we did the project the second time, the first time it was too expensive, so we rebid it. And one of the ideas for lowering price was this pounded pier, or I might not be saying it right, but it's like Peterson Contractors came up with this way of doing these piers that was less expensive, and so we give them the option to do that, right? And so the second time comes through and it's in line with our budget, everything good, but the other guys from Belle Plaine got all, mad about that and were gonna sue us, right? Then they dropped that whole thing. And now we changed our mind on that pounded pier thing. That one guy said would work, one guy said wouldn't work. We said we're gonna go with it. Now we've changed our mind and said, well, we're not really gonna do that. We're gonna go back to the first way. Or we're gonna do some sort of
It's
hybrid
90%.
between the.
It's a hybrid, but it is 90% what was proposed. We're just taking a very conservative approach and saying, against the building, where we've exposed so much of the foundation, we want to go with some helical piers that They're more surgical in those locations. But it is 90% what was proposed, maybe more. So we're still doing the system that was proposed.
Part of that was for the contractor to evaluate and revise that system, right? The way that got proposed, there was some latitude for the bidder to propose a different way of
Yes.
doing it.
Yes. And that's one of the reasons we have the allowances included in the bid, because we knew that there was going to need to be a little bit of flexibility in that. So every bidder provided the exact same allowance number that we required.
Generally, the below ground work is where you're probably most susceptible to changes in cost.
Discovering things that,
Yeah.
yes.
So once we get out of the ground, get the foundation stuff in, hopefully, we'll be in pretty good
Then it's
shape.
the weather that can affect us substantially,
But not to the detriment of the original contract, but like the contract date, yes. Once they get those walls shored and we get the foundation footings, the floor footings in and get the floor done, once we come up out of the ground, then there won't be nearly as many surprises as there are when you're doing excavation, and when you're doing sewer work and any of that type of site work. Once you come up out of the ground, then all those things have been talked through at length.
Any other questions? You had asked for this update to be on the agenda. You had asked for one other item, and that will be on next meeting's agenda because we had a pretty full one tonight.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Just so you are aware.
Appreciate you driving down,
Yeah.
weather and everything.
It's not freezing yet.
That's why we jumped ahead.
Go home and be safe.
Okay.
Thank you much. Now we'll go back to the book study.
Lisa and Matt, you ought to join us. Yeah. Unless, Anthony, you want?
There's another chair there.
So chapter 2 is for tonight, how poverty affects behavior and academic performance. Once again, we had some nice connections made.
Yeah, we did.
With the Anson presentation to some things they do to help address some of this. The first question, in what ways are the emotional lives of low SES kids different from other kids? And what behavioral manifestations might you see or hear about within our schools?
Seems a lot what we're talking about was a general lack of attention is possible, or more likely lack of modeling of social behaviors, lack of activity or exposure to different people or activities, resulting generally in just not knowing how to react to situations where they haven't learned those behaviors. I guess what I would sum up is what I took away from this chapter. Kind of, I think what it seemed to be saying was you're more likely to see what would be called acting out in students from these situations, and that acting out is less I guess how I'd see it, less of a action, more so a lack of other options or reacting in ways that they know and see, but resulting from knowledge of their other options.
Kind of piggybacking on what Ben is saying, and maybe it's a little further ahead in the book than chapter 2, but, you know, the behavior can be thought of as skill versus will. They've never been taught the skills, they don't know what those skills should look like, and in stressful situations, those skills, the skills they've learned look very different. You know, the other part that comes to me from the book is that teachers observe them and they think that maybe they're hyperactive or, you know, there are other things going on, but truly that's their body trying to regulate the environment they're in as they're trying to process, is it a safe place? You know, are my needs being met here? What do I have to be aware of in my surrounding? So people sometimes misidentify it for what it really is.
I think that one of the biggest parts of chapter 2 is essentially the development of the brain as the child is growing from infancy to 2, 3, 4, and the amount of cortisol that surrounds all of the brain tissue and prevents parts of the brain from developing as they should. If you look at the chart on page 18, it talks about the emotional keyboard and some of the things that Ben addressed, and Matt as well, with the taught versus hardwired. There's a lot of those skills that teachers look at. I think that one of the things that we need to look at also is that teachers come from a different background generally. They come from a middle-class background, which has a different set of expectations than the homes of poverty do. Most of you have heard the Ruby Payne information on the classes of poverty, middle class, and upper class, and the kinds of emotions and key concepts that are held by them. Some of our middle class values are unimportant and are not important to the students and to the families living in poverty. That's why, as Matt said, those things need to be taught. It's definitely not hardwired into the brain, as brains are developing. That's the biggest piece that I think that we need to remember out of chapter 2, is that brains develop differently based on the amount of cortisol that surrounds the brain tissues as a child is developing. They can either make things better or worse, and in most instances make things worse, as well as parents not having the training to provide the things necessary for students at that time as they're developing as young children. So I think there's 2 reasons that difference in behaviors and in achievement happen with our students from homes of poverty.
Well, I think we talked, Matt mentioned it, Mick mentioned it, you know, the idea of teachable moments as it relates to these things when they happen, and oftentimes as adults we react immediately to it and sometimes react in a way that actually escalates a situation versus de-escalating the situation. So that is a big part too of, you know, number one, how do we help our employees recognize when these types of things may be coming into play. How do we give them tools or strategies for how to address it without making, you know, a problem a bigger problem type of thing?
So is that so one of the kind of key actions that seemed to be put in here was that you have, you know, if your students don't come to school with these skills, you have to teach these skills. Outside of, I mean, is that in the, I assume it is, but generic curriculum of a teacher coming out of school? Or is that something that is all professional development once they get to a district with more of this kind of need?
I think if you could look at something like Rogers was sharing about their intentional teaching during morning meetings. There is curriculum out there that you can purchase that helps kind of guide teachers through that conversation if it's not intuitive to them. But there's also, you know, like the yoga we saw here, like that kids aren't wired to be calm and in those ways. They're the emotional keyboard that we talked about in the 18, it kind of made me laugh because I thought that's just preschool and kindergarten because it's loud and noisy, and those emotions that kids are hardwired and do naturally are loud. They're loud and offsetting possibly to people in those situations, but that's what comes natural just to children. And at the same time, when you hear about early childhood kids or teachers talking about teaching routines, I think that's it's almost a synonym for curriculum, because teaching routines is teaching kids self-regulation. So there's a lot of that happens in our younger grades.
And I see it happening here. I guess my question is, at UNI, are they preparing teaching students?
No, as someone who teaches in pre-service in the evenings, the coursework folks are getting is very minimal. They might have a general notion of the idea. They're not getting the depth or experience that they need. So as a school district, we're really having to bring this on to staff as they join us.
They do take a course in classroom management, but I think it's taught more from a framework of that managing a system versus really understanding the underlying reasons why kids are doing what they're doing. And it's very short, and it's right before you student teach, and I'm not sure it gets us everything that teachers need.
It doesn't.
And there's a course that they take on the exceptional child, which can be either end of the spectrum with talented and gifted, or special education, or maybe even dwells a little bit into second language, but I'm not familiar with a whole lot of explicit explanation of how you work with kids from poverty in those programs, or what the research says and that sort of thing.
Having been a principal, I can tell you that they don't come with it.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I mean, like, with most jobs, I mean, learning on the job is most of it. You only get so much in school, but do they get any exposure or preparedness for it?
Yeah.
Sounds like not much.
You know, the biggest challenge around what we're talking about now is this is something that we want to do the best we can to front load, because this isn't something you want them to learn as they go. Otherwise, once a child gets used to certain experiences in a setting, it's pretty easy for them to fall back into those experiences, so. So what do we do systemically, to Ben's question, if new teachers there's nothing in college that's preparing them, what do we do systemically to prepare new teachers here for children in poverty, teaching children from poverty?
That's interesting that you asked that, because we just received a summary from Sue Cahill, who's the instructional coach that works with the mentees and mentors, and she just finished her week 20, I think it was, induction kind of onboarding interviews that she does with staff, and because we want to make our program more receptive to what teachers need. We've had a pretty solid mentoring foundational program that was kind of a fits-all system, and the teachers are openly expressing one-on-one in those interviews their great need in terms of how to address student behavior, how to work with challenging students, what's my issue to deal with as a teacher versus the principal. They're asking really great questions, so we're definitely going to use that to revamp the training or focus of what we do in the future. It's kind of like, they also want a lot more information about technology. So
Right.
it's like trying to get all the things they want as new employees in a timely fashion.
And you had a poverty-focused PD day last year, right? Yeah. Maybe it was more than one, but I remember one.
And we're working on, we'll have 90 minutes for definitely in one of those June days that we are making up, which was supposed to be today. And then we're looking at ways to incorporate Jensen's work and others' poverty work for all staff next year.
In April, we've got Manny Scott coming to present to middle school students in the morning, our staff in the afternoon, and then we intend to have a community presentation in the evening. And I mean, this is his life on steroids. I mean, it's like an extreme case of growing up in poverty and having a lot of challenges along the way in life as well as in school and stuff. And so people will be able to hear a very vivid firsthand account of someone going through that, and then also how they were able to rise above that and be successful as he is today. So that will be very powerful, and we're going to work hard to really promote that and hopefully get people to come from our parents and the communities to that evening session.
The AEA does provide semester-long coursework. Reading a book or listening to a speaker is not going to make you a good teacher of students from homes of poverty. It's only going to give you the knowledge that you don't know very much and you need to learn a lot more. I've been pushing and will continue to push for more professional development for all staff in how to deal with students, how to work with families. It's all of, you don't work with the families the same way at conferences, just because of their language patterns that's in another chapter coming up. But the language and the vocabulary development is talked about at the very end of chapter 2, and the lack of for schools to not deal with families in a way that they need to doesn't bring the family into the educational setting. So there's a lot of things that teachers need to learn in how to deal with families, how to deal with students in school, out of school, what the environment in the building needs to be like. We've got almost 3/4 of our population living in homes of poverty, so it's negligent on our part to not know how to work with 3/4 of the students in the district.
It's a challenge too, because I'd say traditional professional learning we've done for teachers and staff is, come learn this strategy and then you'll be able to use it in your math class the next day. And this is a much more, I think people have to think about their bias and what they bring to the table in their past experiences, and do a lot of very kind of soul searching about am I providing an equitable environment for all kids? Am I saying or doing things that are preventing kids who live in poverty from accessing everything else that other kids can? Are we making decisions? I think I talked about this last time. But what are we doing to try to check or redress bias and look at equity? Recognize when we are maybe unconsciously doing things that are having, the negative effect of what we want, so.
And just one other thing to add, through the lens of PBIS for that amount of time that we've had carved in, we're starting to talk about mindset. Because lots of the experiences teachers are having with students can start with the mindset of how are they going to approach working through them, What are those stemming events of causing those behaviors? Not that they made a bad choice, but why did they make a bad choice? What were they going through? How do we respond to them in a way that they can actually learn from that instead of maybe just offering up a consequence and moving forward?
One of the things that we talked about with your update with us was on attendance. One of the 50% of all absences are linked to chronic stress in homes of students in homes of poverty. On page 26, if you look at those items that he lists, those all deal with brain growth, and because of the stress and the cortisol in the brain, those things don't happen with the brain growth in students from homes of poverty. And first one is, it's linked to over 50% of absences, so. Oh, pardon me? If I had an answer, I wouldn't be here.
You'd have written her book by now. And
Yeah.
It's kind of a simplistic possible answer or solution, but, being respectful enough of the families, whether they live in poverty or not, or their brain didn't develop as much as someone else's, but to include them in the conversation, to include them in the solution of how to address their child. I mean, if anyone cares about their child more than the parent, I think that would be hard to imagine. And I think sometimes we fall into the caregiver, we can do everything for the children. But that's kind of sometimes a critical error that we make, is not deeply including the families. And, B is correct. There are families that are not going to be involved for a variety of reasons, the challenges, the stressors they have at home. But there are others that would be involved and want to be involved, but maybe haven't been invited to the table, or have been invited but aren't sure how, or don't feel comfortable coming in. I just think when the kids come and do these presentations, I wish I could pick the brains sometimes of some of the parents sitting out there with their cameras, because they are just glowing and so proud of their children for being here presenting to you, and they're videotaping it, and I'm sure they're sharing it with their friends and families, and I think it just kind of affirms for me that we have what we need here. We just have to, cultivate it, and it takes time, which unfortunately isn't always on our side with achievement deadlines.
I guess reading throughout the book, throughout that chapter, the more I read it, it's almost like it's changing. My brain is changing it to, it's not just poverty, it's mental health. So, I don't know, I feel like everything that they said, that it says that this is why kids do it, my brain didn't automatically say because they're poor. It was mental health, because I've seen parents who maybe they're not in the poverty level, but they're not doing what they're supposed to be to help their kids achieve. And I don't know, I haven't read through the whole book, but if all is going to be connected to poverty, I feel like it's mental health as well. A lot of the things that they talked about, this is what child in poverty does, or a parent in poverty does, and it's just, they don't have to be in poverty to be that way. It could also be a mental health on the parent side, or the way they were raised. I don't know, I don't know if it's happening to anybody, but it's kind of bothering me, the fact that it's being blamed just on poverty, when it could be also mental health, or just neglect from the parents that it's happening.
I would say that, this book is focusing on poverty, but it's also saying that poverty creates these types of situations.
And I get that.
And I think that, I think you could definitely find these symptoms from other causes.
Right.
But this is looking back at the cause of, you have poverty, it creates this. But yeah, I think you're probably right that other things could create those same.
And Karina, going to what you're saying, you know, if you look at a broader spectrum of the research in this kind of work, you'll find all kinds of literature around trauma-informed care, collaborative problem solving, you know, responsive teaching, whole child, like there's a lot of different words around it. But,
And it's probably my background because I've had trainings that way. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
I've
you
seen
think-
this in trauma informed, like it's not.
You think in the mental health
Yes.
world, you know, the vocabulary
Right.
changes, but the situations that create the adverse childhood experiences or ACEs is really the same and ties in really well to here because my experience for the kids in Marshalltown is a lot of them fit well into what they're talking about here. Not all of them,
Not all of them, yeah.
but a lot of them.
Right.
And so it's a good place to help ourself and our staff start thinking about how do we work with families differently than what we've done because we need to.
And you're planning in the near future to provide some information and presentation to educate the board as to some of the efforts that we've got going on in the district relative to trauma-based care.
Yes, yeah. I'm trying to prepare one of those little mini videos to give you guys a little bit of background about some of the district work that's been going on, so.
Did we cover some of your other questions, or do we need to?
Yeah, we covered a lot of it. Well, I guess just a general question, so as we think about what school was like when we were attending to what it is today, what do you know of or see evidenced of changes that have been made to help try to address some of this? One thing would be obviously the federal government and states' practice of if you're at a certain percentage of free and reduced lunch, you can qualify to have all students free so that no one goes hungry.
I think it'll be interesting as we move into ESSA to see how schools and districts shake out and the results after year one, the baseline year of, because it appears that ESSA is more encompassing of the whole child, right? It's because we're looking at culture surveys, like how safe do kids feel at school, family engagement, how do families feel about their school and community. We're looking at chronic absenteeism, so we're looking at more than just their reading score, but there's also a little piece of my brain that's saying, and all of these measures that add up to 100% that are going to determine if we're progressing and not becoming targeted or comprehensive schools, this book would reinforce. All of them are at the whim of poverty in some ways. So if you are a student who's living in poverty, all of those things are challenging for you. Absenteeism is a challenge for you. Behavior, which could be acting out like we talked about, or that need to have a secure attachment is not something that comes natural or has not been well developed for some of the kids that live in poverty. So I think about, well, they broaden the umbrella of things and ways that they're going to measure schools. The things they're measuring them in are still disproportionately going to affect schools like Marshalltown that have high poverty. So I'm hopeful that we'll have, a new fresh start with us compared to No Child Left Behind. But at the same time, if this book is any indication, these added measures of that they're looking at could potentially be not in our favor, if that makes sense. But we won't know for a while, but.
They're adding measures, but those measures are already correlated to the things they're already measuring.
Well, and probably intentionally, they've chosen those because they are high predictors of college and career readiness or student achievement.
I think, the cognitive lag, more so than anything, when kids come in so significantly behind, so all of those other things included, but the hill that they have to climb just to get to where their peers are and how critically important it is, between preschool and third grade to try to get them whatever extra time, people, resources that they need in order to get there, because once they get beyond third grade, and like with literacy where it goes to reading to learn instead of learning to read, that gap seems to exponentially, grow. And then by the time those kids are in middle school, they've experienced such disappointment or lack of success that then you got the social emotional component factoring in, and the ideas of, well, there's no way I can be successful, and the dropouts. And so, for a long time, the state has recognized the importance of early childhood. I thought, one of the real positives coming out of what you showed today is what we have seen happening with the increasing preschool enrollment, being on the right trajectory of, moving towards higher levels of kindergarten readiness, and knowing that we've got a critically short window that, with all the different things that need to be done, that we need to figure out to get more kids towards that point of proficiency. And knowing that we also have kids that, as you said, Lisa, have a double whammy in that they not only have that cognitive lag due to poverty, but they've also maybe got the second language issue as well, which further complicates the situation and is probably going to require more time. So how do you ensure that in the programming and or experiences you're providing that that there are continued successes along the way to help those kids persevere till the time comes when they feel pretty self-sufficient or proficient without needing all those supports. And we've obviously got a ways to go in that regard, but I truly believe we can get there. And despite these disadvantages, get kids to a point where they're positioned to be successful.
Well, I think we have some early indicators that understanding this mindset and applying it works with our kids. If you look at some of the information that Rogers Elementary has talked about on how they approach and teach kids skills that they think that they're lacking, how Marshalltown Learning Academy approaches and works with kids differently who tend to struggle in typical comprehensive settings. Kids do fairly well in those settings, given that those skills are being taught, who might not be successful in some other school setting. So those are positives.
Leveraging the power and capabilities of technology by, providing access to the high-quality digital curriculums that are adaptive. And as was mentioned, if someone's 2 years behind, they can be working at their pace. Someone that's 2 years ahead can be working at that pace, not to replace classroom instruction, but to significantly supplement it and to make sure that the kids are being taught and worked with at their point of need for a period of time that's guaranteed pretty much every day, I think can make a big difference too. And I think those digital programs and the capabilities through technology are just going to get better and better over time too. So I think that this district has taken a huge step in being a district of providing students significant access at school to technology. And now if we can figure out how also to help them have that window to the world, whether they're at school or outside of school, and that sort of thing is going to be pretty important as well. And of course, we've done that now with the middle school and high school with allowing those kids to take the devices home. That doesn't ensure they necessarily have the window to the world with access to the internet, but our hopes would be if they don't, that they'd have a way to find it too, through places where they can go.
Nothing else relieves, I just got to point out what you said, but that stressor from the kids when they're doing Lexia, they're working on their own, in their own pace. And then also the teachers are provided with those objectives of how to work with those kids. So I think that stress on the kids, not feeling lower than the other kids because they're all doing Lexia. And they're all achieving, and they can see it themselves, and they're being worked at that level that they're at. I think that's a good thing for our district that is doing now. To when before, there was, okay, you're low, then you go with the low kids, and, you're being identified of who the low kids are, and so that is I think it's a big stressor reliever for some of the kids that we're having now.
Any parting shots?
From what it was kind of a downer of a chapter, if there's a positive, it's that none of this surprised me too much, I think, because you folks are already focusing on these things and talking about them on a fairly regular basis. So while there's lots of work to be done yet, it seems you're already focusing on these areas. So.
I think my takeaway was, being of poverty isn't a life sentence. It doesn't have to be a life sentence. And so, again, I think it's our moral imperative to do everything we can do within reason to provide the opportunities for kids to be positioned for success. And for some, it's going to take longer than others. And, I'm very thankful to be in a district that recognizes that and is willing to do what we need to do to create more equity in order to accomplish that.
And I think there's kids that are beating those odds with those parents that are engaged, because once we get those parents engaged, then I guess if we finalize the fact that, if parents are engaged, then kids feel like they need to achieve something. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just making sure that those parents are engaged in their kids' education, because to me, growing up, I grew up in poverty. I didn't know I was in poverty because my parents never showed that to me. I didn't know that I was in poverty I didn't even know what poverty was until I got here. To be honest, to me, poverty growing up in LA was you live outside in in a park, with a shopping cart with your belongings. That was poverty to me. Not living in a home with two parents and, watching TV. But now I see it here, that living in poverty is very different than what I thought poverty was. So it's just making sure that those parents know that there is, like what that last page says, there's that beating the odds, being more involved in your kids' education, providing those math and reading skills, and having that support at home as well. And then goes back to the schools, providing that information to the parents on how they can get more involved in the school and in their kids' education. And then those extracurricular activities, those did wonders for my kids. They built leadership skills. They make their self-esteem go up. It's just, that whole Lenahan thing with basketball, that's awesome. They're getting that in an early age, and they're being part of something that they were probably not being able to be part of, in elementary, because they don't have those clubs. They have Ricochet, all that stuff that they can be part of, and it's free. Sadly, we have a lot of programming here in Marshalltown where you have to pay if you want to be part of that. And we have kids that summer program that never been to the Y. Just the delightful, that glow in their eyes when they go into that building because they've never been in there. I've been there to see that. And you're giving that opportunity to those kids and providing the parent with information that there is a possibility of their kids beating the odds. I think that would be something good for us to do, parent engagement.
As you move into chapter 3, you will be a little more upbeat than you are with chapter 2.
Please.
He begins chapter 3 by saying, the effects of poverty on the brain can be devastating. The good news is that being raised in poverty is not a sentence for a substandard life. And he proceeds to tell us how we can do that. Chapter 3 for next meeting. Thank you. Moving into the last bit of our meeting.
Thank you.
Do we have questions for chapter 3?
Well, yeah, we'll shoot what's out.
As we look at board policies, Karina, we have 503, which is a new 5041. Student government.
Yeah. So I move to approve as amendment and waive the second reading.
Any further discussion? Do I hear a second?
Second?
Hernandez, Fletcher, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. 502.9.
Yeah, this is, once again, a combination of a couple policies that we had in addition to vetting with the IASB language. It's been before you now for, this is a third meeting maybe.
Probably.
So
Looks
we
very
have,
familiar.
nothing has changed since the last meeting where we reviewed it.
Could I have a motion to amend and waive second reading?
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher, Miller, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. 5055.
Yeah, actually, if we can
Is that the
cover,
deleted?
if we can cover two policies, 501.13 students of legal age and 502.5 student lockers. These were both new policies to us, but policies that the Iowa Association of School Boards had. So recommend approval of those.
Do I have a motion to
Adopt?
thank you. Thank you.
I would move to adopt.
And waive the second reading.
Second.
Fletcher, Hernandez, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Is 5055 deleted? Because it's replaced by 5029 that we just amended?
That's what it looks like.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what the motion said too.
Miller made a motion to delete.
Yes.
Second.
Did do that.
Fletcher? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. On to Mr. Fletcher's.
All right. A lot of these are going to be just renumberings. Do we just mark those as reviewed with a new number? Or?
Yep.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
So that is not the case with the first one here.
Yeah, let me speak to the first one. The first one, student organizations, we chose to have Chris Wurzberger and John Velde take a look at, because as I read through that, I was pretty confident that that the law had changed relative to particularly how you handle the religious things. And so the changes that are being put forward here are based on their review. And actually, Jackie Raleigh and I had a conference call with Chris this afternoon just to kind of go over that. The only thing that I would change, which I talked to Chris about, is on the last page where it said circulation among the student body must be submitted to the school board prior to distribution. Change that school board to superintendent, because we basically anything that gets circulated, flyers, those types of things all come through our office, and so.
Yep.
This should as well.
So that's 5043.
Yes. 5042, student organization.
Okay.
And renumbered, yeah.
Okay, so 5032 is now 5042,
And this would come
and that
back.
will need to come back. And 5033 is now 5043,
Yep.
and
And there's some changes on that one.
Yeah, the only change other than dates or numbering is we added a paragraph from the IASB, which is what's highlighted.
so that one will need to come back.
Next one is just a renumbering. I would mark it as reviewed with the new number, which
So
is
is that 503
5034, which
to
is,
5083 is just a renumber, okay?
just move it to a different section. Same with 5035, intramural activities, renumbering to 5084. Just mark reviewed.
Okay. 5036, 5046,
Correct.
just a numbering change.
Yep.
Mark as reviewed. 5038 to 5053,
Yep, mark reviewed.
5039 to 5085,
Yep. And reviewed. And this is a new regulation. It's a new regulation, right?
Yes.
It's not, yeah.
5043R1.
Yeah, our policy on student publications references the student publications code, of which we didn't have, so this is just adopting the code that IASB has.
And as long as it's a regulation, we can just adopt. Can I have a motion to adopt and waive the second reading?
So moved.
Second?
Heitman, Fletcher, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 5-0. And we now have 7045.
Yeah, this is a significant renumbering because we're taking it out of the student section
Oh.
and putting it where it better belongs, which is in the finance section, the 700s. We do have the prior policy that you reviewed on activity tickets, but the student activity fund policy should be in the financial policies.
So it's just a renumbering.
Yes.
We can mark as reviewed. Oh, yee-haw, boys and girls. Okay, you have all those? Okay. Mr. Potter, anything of note in communications?
Just gearing up for preschool kindergarten registration on Saturday, and that same day will be the art show from 1 to 3 at Fisher Community Center. So it's a big, plus we're hosting a district speech contest.
And we have Mike and Karina and
Oh, I volunteered to judge. What are you talking
Sean.
about?
Good work, guys.
Has Kirk Niehaus been in touch with you
Mhm.
to tell you when and how?
Only to say that there is no real art talent required to be a judge.
That is correct. The art talent is, what do you like there?
Yeah.
Do you want to see it hanging in central office?
You might have something in our you want to wear out of that one.
We're going to find out.
The next regular board meeting is March 5th. MLA will be making their presentation. We have an interest-based bargaining meeting on February 26th from 4:30 to 7:30 at MHS. Mike, have you replied as to whether you're going or not?
I don't remember receiving an invitation.
So Anthony is going to make sure you get that.
Okay.
I can check right now.
Because I noticed that you and Ross were the only ones who had not replied.
And if we are independent.
Maybe I'm being sent a message.
You received an invitation and have not responded.
That is correct. And
I just got it. No, you sent me something else.
That's the JA.
Okay.
Anthony will resend it so that you'll have it right there in your current emails.
Once I figure out how to resend it, I will.
Just send him an email that says, will you?
Show up on Monday, Mike.
Looking at committee reports, Anthony, I'm sorry to interrupt you while you're doing that, but you want to give us an update on the B&G LMC? The Buildings and Grounds Labor Management Committee.
Yes, so I just wrote down a few of the things we talked about. So discussed new inventory sheets that Travis and Chuck brought to the meeting to show to committee. We clarified a question or two on overtime during weeks in which there are holidays. We talked about the shortage of subs and the sub pay rate. We got an update on staffing for summer cleaning.
Okay, thank you. What have we done this evening to improve education for students in the district?
Wrote a book.
We did indeed.
Well, there's plenty of work to do. I am encouraged by the last couple of updates we've got from Dr. Stevenson on our performance goals. Things seem to be trending in the right direction. I mean, still need more data points, but.
But it's good to see the information.
Yes.
Point blank, just plain ordinary. Anything else?
It's nice to see the roundhouse on track.
There's a large pile of dirt over there.
Yeah, and a big hole.
It's taken a long time to get to that point of digging that big hole.
Happy they built an extra fence for safety.
My quote for this evening comes from Abraham Flexner. He is an American educator and a reformer in higher education at the turn of the 20th century. And he said, "Nations have recently been led to borrow billions for war. No nation has ever borrowed largely for education. Probably no nation is rich enough to pay for both war and civilization. We must make our choice. We cannot have both." May I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher Hernandez, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. We are adjourned, 5-0.